What is up, 242 students? I am Emma Ryan coming at you from the Lansing campus, and I am so excited that you are joining us for service tonight. If this is your first time here, welcome. We are so glad that you are here. If you could fill out the next steps card for us, that way we can get to know a little bit about you. We can get you connected to a small group tonight. If you think that you have a next step that you would like to take, you can also fill out that next steps card, and we will connect with you and help you to take that step. Before we get started with service tonight, I just want to remind you guys, today is Mother's Day, so if you forgot, here's your reminder. As soon as service is over, go make a card, go tell your mom that you love her, go tell her why she's awesome, because she deserves that. They do a lot for us. Mothers are fantastic. I love my mom. Like, we are like best friends. We are tight. Shout out to Telly. Like, if you don't know her, you should, because she's the coolest ever. I want to know, what makes your mom the coolest ever? Like, I think my mom's the coolest, but why do you think that your mom is the coolest? If you could comment that in the chat and let us know, I would love to hear what you guys think is cool about your mom. We are about 1 minute out from service, so I'm so excited that you're here, and we have so much planned for tonight. It's going to be awesome. Have a great service, guys.
Hello, students. I welcome you to this episode of 242 Students Online. Some of you might remember me as Ott, Jacob, or maybe even Professor Oatmeal. But those are all names of the past. I am now referred to as Weeping Ottifer. In these past 20 minutes, I was moved to the art of yoga, and I am forever changed. My wish? To share with you the art with which I have perfected. In these next few minutes, I will be showing you a handful of poses I have mastered. Now, let us begin. Here is the first pose I bring to you, Child's Pose. This is a wonderful first pose to learn. It is the simplest one I will be showing you, and it requires little to no skill. It will also help you look like you know what you're doing. And remember, looking like you know what you're doing is the most important lesson while mastering yoga. Next, I will be showing you Flappy Bird. I was inspired to create this pose while on my adventure in high school. This pose is meant to replicate the delicate action of a flapping bird flying through openings and pipes. Extreme balance is required, like mine. Be aware, this one might take at least 2 minutes to master. Now, let's move on to a personal favorite. Ew, Carole Baskins! Over the 6 years I spent abroad in Oklahoma, I grew close to one of my dear friends, Joe Exotic. This pose was created by him and perfected by myself. In this pose, you want to channel your inner tiger as you scare away the Carole Baskins fans. Don't be afraid to be aggressive with this one. Claw swinging is perfectly acceptable. Now, this next one I had to include, as I feel nearly everybody can relate. dumb Lego. This pose brings back fond memories of walking into my little brother's room only to be ambushed by one of the most creative yet vile toys of all time, Legos. Their colorful and creative draw is just camouflage for their true destructive nature. While performing this pose, you want to embrace and show the hurt and pain these monsters cause you. Now, for this final pose, I really want to show you a pose that I have absolutely perfected. Mom, 5 more minutes! Whenever I perform this pose, I take myself back to a time where silly bands and talkies ran rampant. You really want to channel your inner teenager here and swat that alarm clock. Just smack the life right out of it. Just like your mom smacked you yesterday when you wouldn't give you that Cheeto. Note, this pose will really improve your fly swatting ability as well. Well, this has been such a delight to bring you on this journey with me. I wish you well on your future endeavors of yoga.
What is going on, 242 students? My name is Matt. I'm one of your student pastors, and you're tuned in to 242 Students Online. We're so glad you're here on this Mother's Day. You've probably spent today celebrating mom, grandma, other women in your life who've impacted you greatly. And honestly, we're thankful for those women as well. So whether it's during this or after this, tell your mom, grandma, women in your life, happy Mother's Day from us here at 242 Students. Now, we have some sad news. We announced this last weekend, but that CIY has been canceled for the summer. CIY is our summer camp that we normally go to at Hope College in Holland, Michigan, for both Move and Mix, and we sadly had to cancel it because of COVID-19 and everything going on with that. Now, while that's very sad news, we still have a lot of awesome things coming this summer that are going to help you as a student take next steps with God. Because God doesn't just work at Hope College, He works throughout the world, in and through us, like we've been seeing during this whole stay-at-home order. So if you have any questions about CIY, about why we're not going, or things that are coming at your campus, feel free to reach out to your student pastor at your campus, and stay tuned for some of those things that are coming up. Now, one of those things that's coming up for you juniors and seniors is the worst prom ever on May 15th. It's something that you and your friends do not want to miss. For more information and to register, you can just click on that link in the chat and share that link with friends, with classmates, with people who you think would love to come and just laugh, have fun, win prizes, and just enjoy the worst prom ever, like you enjoy Sharknado and other terrible movies that are somehow awesome. So we're looking forward to seeing you guys there. Now, we're about to jump into worship, and so wherever you are, my hope is that you'll start preparing your heart to worship together. Now, we may not be physically together, but we're still together in spirit, worshiping Jesus and God through this worship all together throughout Michigan, throughout the country, and throughout the world, wherever you're watching. So, wherever you're at, just get into that posture and that heart of worship wherever you're at, and joining us as we start with some worship.
I close my eyes and colors fly. There's no hiding from your grace. I can't deny this heart of mine and its unrelenting chase. I was on the edge of deception, caught up in my own hesitation, until your love took over me. Whoa. So I let go and I let love show me life like it's supposed to be. An oasis, here awaits us, all the freedom I'll ever need. Now I'm alive. Oh la la, oh la la. When I let go, then I find life. Oh la la, oh la la. When I let go, then I find life. before. The Father's heart is beckoning, and I can't resist no more. Lead me in the ways of devotion. I don't wanna get caught in the motions. My heart is only for you, Lord. So I let go and I let love show me life like it's supposed to be. An oasis, here oasis, all the freedom I'll ever need. Now I'm alive. Oh la la, oh la la. When I let go, then I find life. Oh la la, oh la la. When I let go, then I find life. And I let love show me life like it's supposed to be. An oasis, it oasis, all the freedom I'll ever need. Now I'm alive. So then I find life.
My mom, because as long as I can remember, I just remember always waking up early in the morning and walking downstairs and always seeing my mom sitting on the couch, reading her Bible, reading her morning devotional, and always making it a priority to kind of go away and spend some time alone in prayer. And I actually remember being incredibly young and my mom actually walking through the gospel of Jesus with me and kind of explaining what Jesus did and who he was. And she was actually the person who actually led me to salvation. I will never forget that, and I will never forget the impact that my mom has had on my faith.
My first mentor, her name was Melissa, and she's the one who started to encourage me to volunteer in our middle school ministry, and she was the first woman that I've seen leading youth ministry. And so for so many ways, she's the one who helped me to take that first step into ministry, and she's the one who kind of helped to be an example for me in ministry. So thank you to Melissa.
A person who's been really influential in my faith journey is my mom. She just was very real. She just loved God and showed us how to love him without really saying, I'm showing you how to love God. But on top of being natural in how she shared her faith with us and how she raised us in it, she was also intentional and made sure we knew the Bible and knew what it said about us. And I think as a last born too, I felt like she saw me and saw what God was calling me to be. So I want to celebrate Salome Mwikali Mbevi this Mother's Day.
Hey 242 students, this is Misha, your boy, and I'm here with my wife and the mother of our son Wilder. Brittany Mash, she's awesome.
We did it.
Yeah, we had a kid, guys. It happened. Anyways, we just want to say Happy Mother's Day to you, even though you probably aren't mothers yet. We want to say Happy Mother's Day to you and welcome you to our 242 Students Online. I know we're both really thankful for our mothers and the roles that they've played in our faith journey, and I'm sure your mom has played a pretty big role in your faith journey as well. But whether she has or not, we find ourselves on this Mother's Day in the middle of a series on Acts that we're calling The Way. And it's all about the first decade or so of the church after Jesus ascended to heaven. And I thought, what better way to celebrate Mother's Day than to talk about some prominent women in the book of Acts, because I just love that in the story of Acts, it's not just about all these guys that Jesus walked around with for 3 years and what they did. It actually includes the stories of many women in various roles, everything from financial supporters to hospitality supporters to people in leadership that allowed them to get in circles they otherwise couldn't. So we're just going to kind of walk through the stories of 7 really awesome women. And what better way to kick this off than to start by talking about the role that the most famous mother of all time played in the early church, Jesus' mother Mary. So Brittany, you want to tell us what Jesus' mother, what her role was in the early church?
Yeah, absolutely. Acts 1:14 says, they all joined together constantly in prayer along with the women and Mary the mother of Jesus and with his brothers. And so right away, I love this story, just this glimpse into Mary's role in the early church. Because if you're anything like me, I think about Mary and what culture tells me, even if I'm just quickly reading through Acts, if you're thinking about the way that Mary's portrayed in paintings, it seems like her ministry stopped at the foot of the cross, but this scripture is starting to tell us that that's not true. We see Mary later in life gathering with the women of the church and gathering with the church as a whole in what maybe is that first corporate meeting to decide who is going to take Judas's place. And she's playing this active role in asking God and being a demonstrator of what faith can look like as she prays that this decision will work out well. And I love that. I can imagine that other women and other people are looking at the mother of Jesus and thinking, she really believes in her son, and she's following him even after his death and after his resurrection. So what a cool example of just this amazing woman continuing to follow Jesus in the early church.
Awesome. The next story we're going to tell you is about a woman named Tabitha, but she goes by a nickname, and her nickname is Dorcas. Don't ask why she chose to go by Dorcas. It's just must have been a Greek thing. When in Rome, do as the Romans do, whatever. Anyways, Tabitha was known for her kindness and her generosity within the church, especially amongst the widows in her community. She had a really prominent role amongst the widows, and what she would do is she would take her money and she would sew together jackets and clothing for these women who maybe didn't have any means to support themselves. I think it's a lot like us making masks and gowns for people on the front lines today. But anyways, she was really known for that. Anyways, in the story, Acts chapter 9, she gets sick and she eventually dies. And the widows are distraught. They don't know what they're going to do now because this woman had been taking care of them. So they go to Peter, who's kind of the leader of the church, and they say, hey, this is our situation. This is what we're going through. Is there anything you can do to help us? And Peter is so moved by their testimony and by the kindness they talk about with this woman that it says he's filled with the Holy Spirit. He goes up to her room and he prays over her dead body and she comes back to life. And I just love this crazy story of how important this woman was for this group of people, that Peter had to go out of his way to do a miracle to bring her back. And I just think it's so cool to see that this is a woman that took her time, her resources, her gifting, and just a heart for people. It's a great picture of what a servant of God looks like in the early church.
Yeah, and the next woman who also was an amazing servant of God was another Mary, but now the mother of John Mark, who wrote the book of Mark. So this Mary was another amazing woman. And I think of, women in Jesus's day as being like pretty oppressed and not really having any property themselves and really depending on men in order to get by. But you see this woman who is believed to have been a wealthy widow who owned her own home, which was like almost unheard of in this time, right? So she has these things and she has this position that is probably pretty unusual for the time. And she is using her resources to further the kingdom of God. She's providing a home, providing a space consistently for the church to meet. She's spending her time preparing and hosting and just creating this welcome space for the church to thrive in. And I love it that she's a woman of means, but she's giving it back to the church, giving it back to God. Not only that, but again, like mothering her son to the in a way that allows him to become like a key player in the early church.
Yeah. And in that same household, there was another woman named Rhoda, who was probably a younger woman. She was a servant girl. And there's this charming story in the same chapter, I think it's Acts 12, that tells of both Mary, the mother of Mark, but also this servant girl, Rhoda, who among her other duties, it was to answer the door when someone came, when a guest came. And so the church was gathering in Mark's mother's home, Mary, and they were praying for Peter and other people who had been imprisoned because of their preaching the gospel. And while they're praying, there's a knock on the door, and so they send Rhoda to the door, and she answers the door, and it's Peter, who's miraculously been let out of prison by God's Spirit, right? So he's at the door. She gets so excited. She can't believe that it's Peter. She runs back to the group that's praying for Peter, and she's like, hey, guess who's here? It's Peter. He's here. And they're like, no way. There's no way. And she realizes she never actually opened the door and let him in. So she has to go back out to Peter, who's probably still knocking, like, wait, are you going to let me in? And she lets him in, and they probably had a really good laugh. And I just love this because it's like this, it's this humorous story about the early church that makes it feel so real. It almost plays out like a sitcom when you read it. But the other part of this that I love is because we have this, like, in paintings, and when we have our mental picture of the early church, it's this patriarchal, very like serious, straightforward ministry, but it probably looked a whole lot more messy and just like real life than we give it credit. And I love that this story about like a flighty servant girl and a really prominent like mom kind of in the same household, how it paints that picture for us. So
yeah. So much different than that. Although I'm sure she played an amazing role in the early church, there were women who were the ones, like the feet on the ground, getting the gospel spread, across Europe, and other women who were financing and making sure that they're putting their resources into having that happen, having the gospel spread. And one of those women was Lydia. And I love the story of Lydia because I am a businesswoman, and Lydia was a businesswoman. Hers is probably cooler than mine. She was you could kind of see she was in fashion because she was a woman who created purple dyes, right? Which was this like very high-end kind of like, fabric dye. People of wealth and status were wearing purple at the time. So if you didn't know, go get some, I guess. I don't know. But she was a woman who worked in Europe and who created this business and was selling to prominent businessmen and people of high status in the government. And those were her clients, and she was sitting there working with them every single day. Just this woman, just an incredible woman of means and business sense, I guess. Yeah. But one of the most amazing things about Lydia is that she was one of the first converts in Europe, maybe the first convert that was noted to have converted to Christianity in Europe. But not only that, she was using her resources then, taking all the money and taking her influence and making sure that that gospel was spread throughout Europe. After she was baptized, her entire household was baptized. And so Lydia, once she heard the gospel of Jesus, knew that it was true and knew that she had to make sure with everything that she had that it was continue to be spread, and that she was a part of that message and making sure that message got brought to the world.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, Lydia was was a big part of the startup money that got the church going. And when they went from kind of their entry point into Europe, the next spot Paul wanted to go was Athens. He's like, we got to get the message of Jesus to Athens, where the center of culture and society was. So they go down to Athens, and Paul's like, I want to be able to talk to like the philosophical minds, the great thinkers. And so he gets the ability to talk to these guys, and he presents to them what his message is, and they actually give him a stage in the city center where he gets to give a sort of TED talk, I guess, except for the stakes were pretty high because if they didn't like his message, he could get into some serious legal trouble. Anyways, he gives this message, and many people are converted. They give their lives to Jesus that day, and among them was a woman named Damaris. And it's just interesting that Damaris was amongst that group of philosophical and educated elite of Athens. It means a lot about how she was esteemed in the community, and she becomes not only a financial supporter of them, but Damaris paves the way for them to get into some of the elite circles where they wouldn't have been able to get without someone that already had prominent status, being converted to Christianity. And it's just interesting how Lydia and Damaris show us the boundaries of the church did not have a social class in them, and in fact, they needed women and people of that status to be able to spread the gospel more quickly and into areas. It wasn't just for the poor and the downtrodden. So I thought that was a pretty cool story. All right, we got one more, the story of Priscilla in Acts 18.
Yeah, so Priscilla, it was a woman who, was a tent maker, and she was an entrepreneur. Her and her husband are always talked about together. But interestingly enough, Priscilla's name is usually mentioned first. So that means it's kind of showing that Priscilla had greater stature among the people that were talking about her in the Bible than maybe even her husband did. It was even unique for their names to be mentioned together at this time, with her being a woman. But again, her name was often mentioned before that. And yeah, the cool thing about this power couple was that, yes, they made tents, and of course that gave them resources as well as entrepreneurs that they were then pouring into the church, but they were also church planters. And when I looked into this story, I imagined them this might not even be true, but just building tents for churches to meet in. I don't know if that's true, but I think that would be kind of cool. Yeah. But either way, this was a woman who was planting churches, who was a part of the decisions that were being made, where to go and who to appoint into leadership. And again, just another story of a woman playing this incredible role in this culture that maybe wasn't totally for her, but for a God who was so for her.
Yeah, I love it. And there's actually a story tagged at the end of Priscilla's story where they are planting a church in Ephesus, and there's this prominent teacher there named Apollos, who's a really good kind of teaching pastor, but he doesn't really know the story of Jesus' death and resurrection. And it talks about Priscilla and her husband, but probably more Priscilla, playing a role in training him up on a better way to present the gospel. And then Apollos goes and spreads the gospel all over Greece. It's just kind of story after story after story. And then at the very end of these stories, you get Paul's other writings, and he writes this to the church in Galatia. He says, there's neither Jew or Greek, slave or free, male or female, we're all one in Christ Jesus. And this isn't about Paul just trying to flatten the plane and just say, nobody's really anything. Instead, he wants to emphasize the colorful mosaic of the church, and that we're made up of all these people that all have really important roles and standing in Christ. And I just love the stories that we read about women of all kinds of various backgrounds and all kinds of various skills that they brought, and the warmth and the wit and the leadership and the all this stuff that gets involved in creating the church as it was. It wasn't just this patriarchal, a bunch of men sitting in some room making decisions and forcing that on other people, but it was actually a lot of ages and races and languages and backgrounds and gender, male and female, spreading the gospel that turned the world upside down. And this is so important in 2020, not just because we need to reaffirm these truths, but also because there is a world that's watching for the church to lead us through this pandemic, but also for the church to affirm that women have a really awesome and prominent role in many different ways within the church. So I have a quick challenge for you today on Mother's Day, is to take some time and consider who are the women that have helped your journey in faith. Maybe it's a mom, maybe it's a wife, maybe it's a sister, maybe it's a small group leader, maybe it's someone that helped pay for you to go to camp, maybe it's a grandparent. Who are the women that have played a part in your faith journey? And my challenge for you is to send them a message of encouragement. Maybe it's a call, maybe it's a text, whatever it is. Will you encourage them today? Will you let them know how important they've been in your journey? Because at the end of the day, we've all, as ACT shows, all of our journeys have had some really awesome women that have played a role in us being where we're at today as a church. Students, we love you. We miss seeing you in person, but we're going to get through this. And in the meantime, happy Mother's Day.
All right, what's up, 242? Don't go anywhere yet. I got a big announcement to close us out, and it's around prizes around the prom. Now, if you register today for the prom, okay? If you register today, you get 5 additional entries. Literally, we will print your name off 5 times for a bowl that we will draw. And what prizes are we giving away? We're giving away a Nintendo Switch. Oh my goodness, I want it, but I can't win it. But literally, this time next week, you could be playing a Nintendo Switch. You can win Friday and pick it up Saturday, or we can ship it to you. Like, we're giving it away and it can be yours. We're giving away, this is like 70 different gift cards to BCAT, Brighton Coffee House and Theater. 70 different gift cards we're giving out, okay, all with $20 on them. There is a place called M Street that shakes like the size of my head. We're giving away 70 M Street gift cards. Like, this is insane. We've got $300 with Amazon gift cards we're giving away. Our goal is every 3 minutes, pretty much, we're giving out a prize at the prom. And so you really could win one, especially if you register today. If you're already registered, guess what? You just got 5 entries, so don't worry about it. But if you register today, so tomorrow, that's great. We want you to register, but you don't get 5 extra entries, you just get 1. If you register today, if we see your name pop up today, the whole list that's registered by midnight, boom, it's going crazy, and you're gonna get entered for the prizes at the prom. Hey, we hope you can come. It's gonna be the worst prom ever. And we can't wait. We got special guests coming for it, and I am thrilled for it. Hey, it's time for small group. We're so excited. Go talk with your small group if you're a junior or senior about what you're gonna wear to the prom. If you're a freshman or sophomore, you've got this to look forward to. We love you guys, and go be the church, and go have a great small group. We'll see you guys next week.